a lot of people relate termite when they see a property that's fully tented, the entire house has this big tent and this and that. People relate to the tent. And sometimes even the sellers, when you ask them to order the termite report, they are like, I'm not going to pay for that. That looks too expensive. Or the opposite. You're in escrow and you're getting the termite work done, paid by the seller, but the property is not tented. And they are like, why are you saying the work was done? I was driving by the house these days and I didn't see a tent on the property. They didn't do the work. So can you give us the explanation, like when the property gets tented and when is not?
So again, every individual inspector is licensed by themselves, and by law, they can call out what they see fit is best for that particular home or that particular property. So sometimes you may get one house that's tented and one house next door, and it's not. Well, what's the difference? So one of the things that what I do is when I'm taking a look at a house, I'm doing an inspection, is the amount of termites is there. Now, there is no law that says if there's more than 5 spots, 10 spots, it automatically needs to be tented or anything underneath, right? So
Up
again, it's going to be the call on the actual inspector.
tent.
However, if I see a lot of damage around the property, especially in areas that I can't physically get to, so if I'm in a crawl space or an attic and I see there's evidence, some pallets, the termites themselves, the damage in an area that I know I can't get to, but I see it over there, then obviously I'm going to want to call out a fumigation because I want to make sure the entire structure is eradicated of the termites. Now, if I go to a house and I looked high and low and I looked at every little nook and cranny I can possibly get to, and I only saw maybe 2 or 3 spots, then in that case, then you might be able to do what's called just a local treatment, which where you just drill the area and make sure you get the gallery. You inject an insecticide inside there or termiticide, so that way we can kill anything that's in that wall or that wood member.
Okay, so basically the tenting is to get to areas that are not accessible.
Yeah. Primarily, yes. Again, remember there's different variables that can go into it. One of the things too that I like is again, if even if all the areas I find, let's say, are accessible, but if I feel there's just quite a bit of termite activity, then my thinking or my logical thinking is going to be, well, then odds are it's probably going to be in areas that I just can't see either. So then maybe I might want to call out a fumigation
just to be safe.
You're watching The Nuggets with Alex Lopez.
Hello, guys. Welcome to another episode of The Nuggets. My name is Alex Lopez, and today I have the great pleasure to be interviewing Albert and Duane. They are with BUGNEX, Termite and Pest Control. As I was saying behind the scenes, guys, thank you very much for accepting the invitation. Welcome to The Nuggets. Purpose of doing this podcast, as I mentioned, is to share that the nuggets to consumers, home buyers, home sellers that need in a real estate transaction. As I mentioned, you guys are termite and pest control experts, and today my ultimate goal is to basically dig and gather information that I know is going to make a difference for a consumer out there, even for real estate agents that starting in the business that need these nuggets to work efficiently and so they can serve the consumer. So once again, welcome to the episode, welcome to the channel. And I would like to you guys to introduce yourselves. We have Albert, we have Duane. Go ahead, guys.
Hey, thanks for having us on, Alex. I'm Duane Morrison, one of the partners here at BUGNEX, and today we have Albert. He's the manager over our pest control department, and we're just excited to be here. You want to say a little bit about yourself, Albert?
Yeah, thank you, Duane. My name is Albert. I've been in the business for well over a decade now. I have 3 state licenses. Primarily, I work in the structural side, and as Duane said, I oversee the pest control department.
Great. And I want to, I know Duane, as I mentioned, close to 2 decades, I think. And I've seen everything that he's been doing with his companies now, and now I'm glad to hear you guys are partnering up with this termite and pest control. Definitely goes hand in hand by what you the services you already provided. So that's why thank you for accepting the invitation, because my goal is not only to share the nuggets on this podcast, but it's also to talk to professionals, to talk to experts, specialists on their own field, that I can assure that what we're going to share, it's something that's going to bring a lot of value to people. So once again, thank you for accepting the invitation. And as I mentioned, let's pretend we met at the LAX airport and we're flying to San Francisco, and we're going to be chatting about what you guys do. So, the first question that I have is the most simple question is, why a homeowner or a home seller needs a termite report before buying a house?
Well, that's a good question. We have especially here in California, we have a lot of different types of termites. Well, especially maybe two or three. And it's important to know the condition of the property so you can make an informed decision uh, based on what your specific needs are and what you're looking for prior to releasing your contingencies and buying the property. And then knowing, I believe, Albert, I'll let you speak to what the ramifications are, and what the report can do for you in preparation.
So one of the things that I try to educate people on is that homes obviously are not they're expensive, so they have a high value, and you want to make sure that everything that's going on with that house, you want to make sure you know what's happening, and that's what the report does. The report's going to give you a section one, section two. It's going to let you know, what kind of damage there is, if any, and then you're going to know how to have the best solution to keep that house pest free.
Great. You mentioned something really important, Dwayne. You mentioned type of termites. I've been in real estate 19 years now, and I always seen the pictures of the termites and stuff like that that termite companies have shared with me over the years, but I have no clue what type of termites are those. So you mentioned three. What are the most common type of termites that are in the property?
Well, here in California, the most common types are subterranean and drywood termites. That's what we find more than anything else. There are other, and I said that loosely, the term termites, because most people don't realize that there are other wood-boring insects like ants and bees. And if you do have subterranean termites, there are causes of and things you can do to stop them from, I don't know about totally stop them, but to control them from maybe getting up in through the crawl space or the foundation of the home, because they like moisture. And then you have drywood termites that you can find them a little higher up because they're not typically in the ground, but they like moisture too. You want to speak to that a little bit more?
Yeah, so just to kind of piggyback with Duane, is that's why the inspection report or the WDO report is so important, because it's going to break it down of what type of termite you have and the locations in the house and the damages. So, for instance, Alex, you brought up that you've been in real estate for some time now, and still, obviously you don't have all the knowledge on termites, and that's what the report's going to do. It's going to educate not just real estate agents, but the buyer, seller, everybody, what's going on. As Duane said, primarily in California, we're going to deal with drywood termites and subterranean termites. Now, they almost look very identical. There's some little differences, and that's why you're going to want a certified or a licensed inspector out there so he can find those for you. And we crawl everywhere around in the house. I mean, if we can fit in there, we're getting in there. Or we get in the attics, we get in the crawl spaces. We're looking high and low, so that way your investment is protected.
Just to summarize the type, you said subterranean and drywood, and they both like moisture, you said, because yes, I'm noticed like when we're doing a home inspection, when you guys go, you know, through the crawl space or the foundation, there's a comment on the home inspection that says signs of termites. And it seems like like you said, that they like moisture.
Right.
Out of the two, which one is more like damages the most, or they're equally, a hazard to your property?
You know, um, Albert, I mean, is there a difference between drywood and
Yeah,
subterranean?
yeah. I mean, you don't want either one of them in your home. That's the key thing.
Oh yeah.
But as far as subterraneans, they because the way they work, the size of them, the colony, they're going to do a little bit more damage than the drywoods.
Right.
Drywoods are typically going to be up higher. Subterraneans, they're going to be lower. So they're usually going to be in the crawl space if you have one. Even if you're on a slab foundation, they can come through the nooks and crannies because the queen and the colony are going to be underground anyways. So they're going to come up. And like I said, because the termite itself is bigger, the colony, the way it works, uh, typically subterraneans will do a little bit more damage. But at the end of the day, you don't want either one of them because they're going to do, catastrophic damage if they're left unattended.
I'm glad you mentioned that slab foundation, because when there's raised foundation, it's easier, and is you everything is easier, on my opinion, with the raised foundation. But with the slab, we don't know what's going on underneath. So just to understand this clearly, and I'm sure a lot of agents sometimes they are afraid of asking questions that might sound dumb, but there's no dumb question. Um, so how do you know, how do you treat if there's termites underneath? How do you find out? Because there's a love foundation. What's the way to see if there's termites there?
Well, when you're doing these inspections, Alex, you're going to notice on the report, what's visible at the time of inspection. So we can really only call out what's visible, what's accessible, what we can see. Now, even during a slab or a home that's on a slab foundation, there are ways for us to find any evidence. For instance, mud tubes, the way they're eating at the wood, and so forth. Now, if you're on a slab, that means they're still underground. So depending on the exterior, the way it looks, we'll have to do some drilling. If there isn't cement around the house, then we'll do some trenching. But either way, we got to get the chemical to the soil so that way they can feed the termites can feed off of it.
That is, that's a great answer, man. So there is ways, there is science in
Yeah,
that.
there's definitely ways. So we don't want people to feel, that if they're on a slab foundation, that there's no way to get to them. That the only way is going to be until there's complete damage or they're all over up in the walls. That's not the case. There are preventative measures we can take. There are other things we can do. Like I said, we can drill, we can trench. There's a lot of different ways we can get to the colony.
Let's talk about something that is key here. Is the home inspection report free?
Sometimes, not all the time. Some companies offer them for free, some do not. There are a couple of companies here in SoCal that specialize on real estate inspections. And then there are companies that don't. So BUGNEX, for example, we focus highly on the real estate transaction, and we do provide free termite inspections during the week. If we're called out on the weekend, then we charge a small fee. And then we also charge sometimes when they're very large properties or multi-unit commercial properties. But I mean, that's just because it takes a long time and we're regulated. We have to write a report that's got to be submitted to the Structural Pest Control Board, and there are costs involved. But for the most part, your average transaction, it's a free report.
Why am
And
I, why am I asking this question is because, let's see, when you're in a listing appointment, the first question, one of the questions when we get a list, we ask the seller, have you done a termite work? When was the last time you did termite? I highly suggest let's order a termite report. And they're like, is it free? Or who pays that? Am I paying that? Are you paying that? And we get solicited by a bunch of thousands of termite companies, offering, inspections, free inspections, and this and that. But at the same time, I've started noticing there are certain companies that started charging, that is preventing the consumer to actually order the inspection. The sellers are like, no, I'm not gonna pay, and it's a business decision that the homeowner is making. But I wanted to understand, the logic behind a majority of termite companies not charging us for a service, because getting that termite report, it's a service, and like you said,
Right.
create a cost on your own.
Well, Alex, we've decided to not charge when we can avoid it. Uh, it's just it is a lot of work when you're out there inspecting all day long. Most termite inspectors make a commission on the work that's done, and so what happens is we'll provide a report. We'll give estimates for repairs or fumigation, and we'll make our money based on work that's ordered. And so it's important that when real estate agents are getting listing inspections or working with a buyer, that they support the companies that they work with, so we can. I mean, it's reciprocal, right? I mean, and so we have to pay our bills, but a lot of companies uh, don't see it that way. They want to get charged for every single thing they do and don't look at the bigger picture.
Right. And you know what? And I'm glad you mentioned this whole thing with the agents, because it's collaboration. It's I mentioned this in another episode I just recorded. The importance of collaboration between everybody involved in the real estate transaction, because ordering a termite report, having a termite report before you listing the property, you're working efficiently. You're working ahead. You already have all the odds in a row, and you know exactly what's going on with the property. How do you do that? Bring in another professional to the picture, provide a termite report, and we already know it's a $5,000, $7,000, $3,000 work, and we know exactly what we have. So we're ahead once we submit the offers. When we kind of like negotiate, it's a great offer. They are asking for termite, just pay it. We have the report. It's not much. So it's like that knowledge makes a difference for the negotiations as well. So, and now for agents out there that are watching this, even consumers, BUGNEX, don't charge for the termite report. Just don't call them on the weekends. Cool.
Well, I like to liken it to, and it's so important to hire a professional, top-notch, experienced, proven real estate agent because they know who the good partners are, right? And just being somebody that lists their house by owner, you can go ahead and you can call out, a big company that's well known like Terminex or I don't think it's Western anymore, but you have no idea who that inspector is that's showing up. Whereas a realtor is going to know who the good people are, who the partners are that are going to charge a fair price and follow through with good customer service.
And I completely agree with that, because like sometimes the realtor is not just a realtor. The realtor has a network of professionals that work at the same caliber. At least I'm talking about myself. Like
Right.
everybody that I work with, they are, like you said, top notch. They are elite professionals that, because you guys are the extension of my services as well. And I perform well when I have this network of professionals, because we're a team, like having a well done, a thrill home inspection report. We have the termite report. Sometimes even the working with the right appraisal, that we don't choose the appraisers, still makes a difference when someone knows what they're doing. And it's going to be, at the end of the day, the benefit goes to everybody involved in the transaction, especially the consumer. So I agree. So, guys, agents, don't forget, BUGNEX, call Duane, call Albert. All right. Now, moving forward, um, how long for how long the termite report is good, like valid? Because sometimes, let's see, there are some home sellers that are taking their sweet time to list the property, and they already ordered the termite report, and it's been 60 days, 90 days. They are in escrow. It's been 90 now. Can they rely on that termite report, or do we need a reinspection?
Albert?
So I mean, it's going to vary. One of the things that the reason why that question is hard to answer is because there's variables in that. Now, if they call us within 36, 60 days, not a problem. But if they've done anything to that structure of that house, removed, added on, whatever's going on, it's best if we go back out there to just kind of take a look at it because again, a home is very expensive. So you're investing a lot of your money into it. You want to make sure that report is up to date as as closely as possible to the date of your purchase. You want to make sure everything is going on with that report. So you can always give us a call. We can always go back out there just to make sure everything's okay, nothing's changed, especially if we found any evidence. That's the thing, and that's why I said there's so many variables. So let's just say we do the inspection and there's termites added, crawl space in the walls, whatever it is. You call us back in 90 days. Obviously, there's going to be now some more damage. So you're going to want us to go back out there to take a look at it.
Yep.
Okay, now, and this one goes out to the home buyers. They're buying the house, they're in escrow, everybody's excited, and you started getting the reports, home inspections being done, termite inspections being done, or termite inspection. It was listed by Alex Lopez. We already have a termite inspection ready. We share with the buyer. Now, they get the report and they don't know what it says. And I'll be honest, the first time I saw a termite report, the first few times I saw it, I was like, what is this? I don't get it.
Right.
You know,
Right.
like, because there's no one to tell you, Alex, let me show you. Let's go over the report together so you understand. So the first thing you see that diagram where when there's these numbers and letters, and then go section one, section two. So if you are talking to your cousin on Thanksgiving dinner or Christmas dinner and they ask you, Albert, so how do you read? What do I look into termite inspection report? What's the most important things to look at on the report? What would you say?
Well, obviously, you're going to want to take a look at the section one. So the section one is actually that's activity that's happening right then and there. The WDOs, the wood destroying organisms. Section two is something that could lead into a problem. So that's obviously you want to take a look at the section one first. But one of the things we pride ourselves here at BUGNEX is that you have the capability of getting in touch with your inspector. So yes, you're right. It's hard to read those reports. So you have a diagram, and then you have the findings, and they go hand in hand. So really, you're going to look at that diagram, and then you're going to look at the findings, and then just kind of piece them together. But even then, that may be very difficult. So you're going to want to call your inspector, and he'll walk you step through step. This is what we found. This is the evidence. This is the next step we have to take to eradicate that situation or to fix the problem.
And that goes back again, who you're working with matters because sometimes inspectors are not available. They did inspection and they're like, there's the report.
Yeah.
And so they say, call me if you have any questions. They never answer. Or, they are not through explaining the contract. And that applies to real estate, applies to escrow, applies to home inspection. You know, there's some professionals that I wouldn't call professional. They don't explain. They just don't explain. It's like there's a report by to the next inspection. It's good to know that you guys are available to explain the report. So
And that's why too, Alex, it's so important to give us a call because again, that report, the one of the misconceptions, they'll keep calling it the termite report or inspection. It's really a WDO. So it's, as Duane stated earlier, the beginning, the wood destroying organism. So there's other things that are going to be on that report. So people might get confused. They might think, hey, I wanted a termite inspection. Why do I have carpenter ants? Why do I have woodborne beetle? What's all this other stuff that's on it? I didn't call for this. So that's why it's so important to call your inspector so he can walk you step through step on all the finding that's on that report.
you mentioned WDO. What it stands for?
So it's wood destroying organism.
I've seen that on the report, but consumers, that nugget is for the consumer. Okay, good destroying organism, right? W.
Yes.
Okay, now this one goes for agents. So there's section one, section two, and the purchase agreement. When you submit an offer, there's the section, who pays what, and agents normally put section one, and have buyer to pay section 2. That was the old, the old days that was section 1, section 2, but a lot of people didn't even understand what section 2 was. So section 1 is the actual damage, right? The actual work, the actual whatever needs to be done. But section 2, it's things that can lead to infestation, correct? But you guys on section 2, whatever you see, you guys do some work to prevent. Like, give me an example of section 2. What will be a section 2?
Well, I mean, there are a number of different things, but one of the years past, for instance, let's just say we're checking underneath the sink and there's a leak, but there's no dry rot anywhere. There's no evidence of subterraneans anywhere. So obviously that's not going to go under section 1. But if that leak is not contained or fixed, well, there can be issues that could come with it. Dry rot, so it can lure subterraneans out of the ground. That's one of them. Another one that I've come across actually quite often is when you go in crawl spaces and there's a lot of cellulose debris. So really anything that has a starch or a sugar molecule, anything like that. For instance, like maybe plumbers or people who worked under the house, they leave cardboard everywhere. Maybe we didn't see any subterraneans. Maybe we see any damage, but things like that that are just laying on the dirt, laying on the ground floor, can cause an issue in years later. So those are things that are going to be at section 2. Not any issue yet, but could cause some problems down the line.
Okay. And I'm glad you mentioned that, debris and stuff like that, because it's very common, especially when you go under foundation, you see all these there's like leftovers, like like plumbers, contractors, they leave their garbage there, and you know I so basically is make sure you have that clean. And I was doing these two projects on our properties for the last 2 years, and I noticed that, yeah, contractors don't get their garbage, they don't get their cardboard, they don't get everything out. You need to be like, there's things that are common sense. You're doing this, you're providing this service, I'm expecting you're gonna grab your stuff and get it out. They don't. You need to be on top of them, and especially if you don't pay attention to a crawl space or foundation, you're gonna find a bunch of stuff. Now, I want to ask you this question, that your answer is leading me to this question. So, when the consumer, the home buyer, receives a report, Section 1 is paying by the seller. Seller's not paying Section 2, but I just spoke to Albert, and Albert said that, there's a leak that in the future, might lead to termites. So that's something, you should fix, or we can fix. You know what? We'll do it, or we'll do it later, because, we don't have money to pay the whole report, Section 1, Section 2. On this specific scenario, how long it will take to termites to show up if you don't take care of section 2? So you
Well,
don't.
again, that's a huge variable. I mean, so for instance, when we're doing the inspection, we can only call out what's visible and accessible at the time of inspection. So let's just say that leak has already kind of been luring subterranean termites out of the ground. But during the inspection, probing, all that, we don't see it at that time. But maybe they're just at that threshold of coming out. I mean, they can come out within a few weeks, maybe a couple months, a couple years. So that, again, that's a huge variable. But again, it's you don't want to turn a blind eye to any issue that may be a cause for some issues down the line. Because if you have that mindset, oh, I'll get to it later, next year or a couple of years, or I'll wait till something is damaged, then then it could cost you a lot more in the long run.
Yeah.
Now, let's go back to section 1. The type of work that you normally see on section 1. Um, a lot of people relate termite when they see a property that's fully tented, like, the entire house has this big tent and this and that. People relate to the tent. And sometimes even the sellers, when you ask them to order the termite report, they are like, I'm not going to pay for that. That looks too expensive. Or the opposite. You're in escrow and you're getting the termite work done, paid by the seller, but the property is not tented. And they are like, why are you saying the work was done? I was driving by the house these days, and I didn't see a tent on the property. They didn't do the work. So can you give us the explanation, like when the property gets tented and when is not?
So again, every individual inspector is licensed by themselves, and by law, they can call out what they see fit is best for that particular home or that particular property. So sometimes you may get one house that's tented and one house next door, and it's not. Well, what's the difference? So one of the things that what I do is when I'm taking a look at a house, I'm doing an inspection, is the amount of termites is there. Now, there is no law that says if there's more than 5 spots, 10 spots, it automatically needs to be tented or anything underneath, right? So again, it's going to be the call on the actual inspector. However, if I see a lot of damage around the property, especially in areas that I can't physically get to, so if I'm in a crawl space or an attic and I see there's evidence, some pallets, the termites themselves, the damage in an area that I know I can't get to, but I see it over there, then obviously I'm going to want to call out a fumigation because I want to make sure the entire structure is eradicated of the termites. Now, if I go to a house and I looked high and low and I looked at every little nook and cranny I can possibly get to, and I only saw maybe 2 or 3 spots, then in that case, then you might be able to do what's called just a local treatment, which where you just drill the area and make sure you get the gallery. You inject an insecticide inside there or termiticide, so that way we can kill anything that's in that wall or that wood member.
Okay, so basically the tenting is to get to areas that are not accessible.
Yeah.
Primarily, yes. Again, remember there's different variables that can go into it. One of the things too that I like is again, even if all the areas I find, let's say, are accessible, but if I feel there's just quite a bit of termite activity, then my thinking or my logical thinking is going to be, well, then odds are it's probably going to be in areas that I just can't see either. So then maybe I might want to call out a fumigation.
Just to be safe.
Okay, now, and I'm just going to ask your opinion. Which one is better? Because you said it depends, but you just mentioned something that triggers this question, like, is it more efficient to tent the property or it goes case by case?
um, as owners of a pest control, termite and pest control company, we periodically actually tint our houses about once every 5 years just to be safe. We inspect our own properties, but it's because we know, a lot of times we may not even see anything in our house and we can have termites. Would you agree?
Yeah, I mean, it's like I said, it's a very wide open question, Alex, because like I said, there's more than one right way to do something. That's the way I think of it too.
Yeah.
But with BUGNEX, we will actually give you the breakdown of the price between a fumigation and local treatment. We'll give you our personal recommendation. This is the which way you should go, because sometimes I've been in situations where I said, we can do a local treatment. We don't need to throw a bag over the house. And then there's other situations where I say, we need to tent it. Yeah. Again, it's going to vary on one, the type of termite, two, the amount of damage. And then one of the things I take into consideration is I try to find everything I can about that house. If I know that house hasn't been tented in 10, 15, 20 plus years, my mindset is going to say, let's just bag this house because, the last or the previous owner really didn't upkeep its maintenance.
Right. Duane mentioned that is like I would do it at my house like every 5 years. That was my next question. That escrow closed, everybody's happy, they own the property, they got the termite done and done. Alex was able to negotiate all these credits, all these things paid by the seller. But when is a good time to redo to do a termite inspection? After what time? 5 years?
Well, again, depending on there are some variables in that. Like my house, for example, I have a lot of big oak trees all around my house. We have wood fencing, and I see the bugs in the fence. I don't ever see them in my house, but I know there's termites swarming around. In fact, I think Albert just found some last week that I didn't know was there behind the water heater. And so for my home, just because the neighborhood I'm in is a very older neighborhood, there's a lot of old growth. I feel safer, doing it every 5 years on my house. But, you know, it's a good thing to do if you can afford to do something like it. It costs several $1,000s to tint a property. But I mean, if you're in a newer neighborhood or a neighborhood that doesn't have a lot of old growth and a lot of trees, and there's really not a lot of evidence of termites around, maybe you can, do it every 10 years. But I mean, it is a good idea at some point in time to tint your home.
Okay. And it's good to know that because, a lot of people tend to think that, oh, the termite was done. Oh, great. How long ago? Like 15 years ago. You're going to have a bunch of termites if you haven't done any work in
It's
15.
surprising. I mean, the termites are everywhere,
Right.
and a lot of times you won't even see them until you open the walls to do a remodel. I mean, we've done a remodel on homes, well, especially mine. You opened up the wall and it's like, whoa, you just it's like you have electrical wiring in there that wasn't terminated correctly, and like, oh, it looked like some bugs were eating up on the wood, and you just can't see it because everything's enclosed.
Okay. So 5 years. Remember, guys, 5 years at least every 5 years if you're, depending on location too, like you
Sure.
mentioned. But
Especially in the coastal areas. If you're near the beach, do you say that's probably where we have a lot of the biggest issues?
Yeah, and those areas are going to be a key factor, and that's why it's so important to get the inspection because you want to make sure that valuable asset is protected.
no, no, let's talk about this service that certain companies, I don't know if you guys provide that service, but there are some companies that they go and offer this monthly or every 2 months, treatment so you don't get termite. Is that really necessary? I'm asking you because I have used those services in the past in our home, and I kind of was like, I don't think we need this, but whatever. And then we stop. What are your thoughts? Because I'm talking about as a consumer, and I'm talking about also. Remember, this podcast is called the Nuggets, so we want people to get what actually works. Like
Right.
do you
Well,
need to tend or do you need to treat? Depends. Depends what the report says. But we're trying to, like you said, Dwayne, tinted the property costs several $1,000s, and that's why a lot of people don't want to do it. So
right.
there's people that they didn't get the credit from the seller, and they are paying out of pocket. So they are looking for an efficient way of solving the problem that's not going to break their bank account.
So I'm going to defer to Albert on this, but before I do, there's something that a consumer should be aware of, and that is there are reoccurring or periodic services that really you can take advantage of, and that's pest control in just general terms. So, for example, a customer calls us and we want to come out and take a look at the property or sign them up for bi-monthly or quarterly pest control, and our technician will come out and spray for ants and spiders, and that technician can even do treatments for like for termites or wood rot that's in the fascia board, right? And that guy typically is the eyes and the ears and can help the consumer determine what fits their specific needs. And you want to speak to that?
Yeah, so I don't want to get too much off the subject, but when you were talking about the monthlies and bi-monthlies, that's going to typically be for what's called general pest control, which, as Duane was talking about, like your ants and spiders and so forth. Now, if you want to have the house protected from termites, you don't need to have it treated every month or every other month. Once a house is, especially if it's fumigated, once that house is fumigated, the great thing about that is it's going to take quite some years before any termites can colonize. Perhaps during termite season, you might see like on the floor a bunch of wings. 90% of them or so are going to dehydrate on their own. It's going to take some years before they can recolonize and reinfest. So that's one of the advantages of fumigating. Once you get everything taken care of, then you're taken care of for 5+ years. Now, we do offer things like called yearly controls, where we'll come out to reinspect And then if needed, we can locally treat those areas for you. But typically those are going to do about once a year or so. You don't need to do so often. But the monthlies, bi-monthlies, and quarterlies, that's going to be, again, for your general pest control, which is a great service to have. Keeps the house pest free. One of the things that my customers really love about the pest control service is that their house gets cleaned up of all the cobwebs around the trash can areas, around their kids' play sets, the dog house, whatever it may be. We take away all that cobwebs. We spray the eaves, we spray low. That way we make sure your house is pest free to the best possibility.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure you. I don't know if you were speaking, Alex, towards like where you see some homes will have like plugs in the ground that like kind of attract termites instead of letting the termites go to your house, and it prevents infestations. I don't know. What's your opinion on that?
My opinion, okay. So what Duane is talking about is there's these stations that we can leave inside the soil. Again, at the bottom of that station, it's kind of hard to describe, but it's a container that drips in or drops down into the soil. At the bottom, there might be some monitors or some cellulose debris that would attract the termite to it. And inside that tube, there is some chemical that will kill the colony. When you do that, you sometimes are, again, you're attracting them to the house because maybe not 100% will go to that base station. Maybe some of them will kind of flare off to the house. So there's that possibility. One of the things I like about the chemicals we use is it has an active ingredient called furpanol, and what's great about it is it attaches to the soil. So instead of leaving something that's going to attract them, that chemical stays or bonds with the soil, and it's not systemic. So you don't have to worry about it bleeding into your vegetation or nothing like that. It stays with the soil. So if the termites do come, they'll pick up that chemical and it'll kill off the colony. But again, every situation is a little different. There's again many variables. Me personally, I like to do the liquid treatment.
Great. And I'm glad, every answer leads to another question. And thank you for sharing that. You said something that if the property is being fumigated, it's going to take quite some time, for termites to show up again. One of the most common questions we have when there's like a home buyer that took the time to look at the report and, everything is done. The question they ask is, they might call you and ask, do this work have warranty? And if it does, for how long? So what's the answer on that? Do termite reports have warranty?
Go ahead. Yes.
So again, the work will always be warranty, according to the finding and to the work we did. So for instance, if we fumigate the house, we're going to warranty it. Typically, it's a couple years that you'll get the warranty on, which is nice to have because you just have that peace of mind in your house. And, for the next 2 or 3 years, I know this house is going to be covered by BUGNEX. I can call them, I can ask them, they'll take a look at my house or whatever it may be. The repair work, again, that's different. So if we replace any structural damage or any type of deficiency on the wood members, we're going to give you a warranty as well. But again, according to what's on that report and to that wood member. So one of the things I tell people to be careful with is, like, for instance, if you buy a house, we do a fumigation, we do some treatments, we do some repair work. And then 3 months later, the homeowner now blows out a wall and attaches, another structure to it. And they say, hey,
it wasn't, so it doesn't apply. It's a different, you have to,
exactly, yeah.
Or whatever you guys did doesn't cover that part.
Yes.
Okay, so
yeah, and when you have some companies and they're providing guarantees on their service, it does vary. I mean, there are some companies that will put Bondo or just put a filler in damaged wood, and then, for instance, our company, we really try not to do that. We'll try to replace the wood member. I mean, at least a couple feet. So it's fresh new wood. It's not just filled with an injection of like Bondo or plaster.
I'm glad you mentioned that because my next question was we discussed about tenting fumigation and this and that. Now I wanted to talk about treatment. On my head is like treatment is like when they replace the wood, the veins, and stuff like that. So, but you said sometimes they just do fillers. and sometimes you say it's better to replace the wood. So just as a nugget, when you know that there is termite work being done on your property and treatment is going to be done, can you request the termite company, can you replace the wood, or it's up to you guys?
Yes, you can, and really you should. I mean, unless it's a really small area, right? I mean, Albert, we've seen sometimes they'll literally like mold a piece of wood onto like several feet of wood that's gone, and it's a kind of unsightly, right? I mean, it doesn't. It's not it's not real good craftsmanship. I like to say, and then there are a lot of companies you got to be aware they'll replace the wood, but they won't paint it. And you always want to make sure you ask them to replace the wood and paint the wood.
Right. Like I've seen that, it's like done, but now the house has like is a little like zebra, different colors, like and yeah. But so just to be clear on this, because like you said, same on our end, right? Our license is the same that any of thousands of real estate licenses, but the services varies depending who you're working with. Based on what I'm hearing here, it's the same with termite companies because there are termite companies that they say, "Oh, my warranty is just 1 year," or it's 6 months, or sometimes they, like you said, they do the work, and but the craftsmanship is not properly done, don't paint, and sometimes you have to go. The appraisers calls that out and say, "Nope, it needs to be painted." And I'm glad you mentioned that. So wrapping this subject up, the whole thing, wood needs to be replaced. That's the something you suggest, and paint it. Basically, you need to leave it the way it was, right?
Yeah,
But fix.
yeah. I mean, it's maintenance to your home. So wood doesn't always last forever. I mean, some wood lasts a really long time, but once wood's damaged, you should just replace it.
That's gonna be quoted. Okay, now let me see. Now let's talk about condos now, townhomes, things that are managed by an HOA. Every single time I get a listing, I provide a net sheet to the seller, and I always include termite. Like I put 1,500. I don't know it's gonna be more or less, but just kind of an average. Like, and clients ask me, but how do you know it's 1,500? I say I don't know it's 1,500. It could be less, could be more, but on condos and townhomes, I stopped doing that because this is what started to happen. The HOAs are like, no, we're using our own vendors, and the HOA supposedly they cover the termite damage. So, what can you tell us about that? Because that we do need clarification. I need clarification as an agent, and I want clarification to the consumers also.
Well, in most cases, the HOA covers the structure of the building. In most cases, so you always have to check your CCNRs and find out what is the responsibility of the homeowners association. Sometimes they won't cover the deck, in the back or the balcony in the back. Like in HOA, I have a property, they're not covering the decks unless if there's been any modifications to them. So it's kind of a nuance. Uh, but they do cover all the decks for termite if there haven't been any modifications to the decks. In other words, if the homeowner hasn't changed anything. But as far as the framing inside the walls, I would say 98, 99% of the time, that's going to be the HOA. And so, that's great. What you want to do is you just want to defer to the HOA regarding when they've had the property inspected and what their responsibility, what their maintenance schedule is, and things like that.
Okay, now hypothetically speaking, I wouldn't say hypothetically because sometimes sellers say these HOA sucks. They take forever. They take months to do this. And I'm aware, like I had clients that we closed the escrow, and what they said they want to do, it took months to do it, termite included sometimes. Um, how hard or how difficult is to me representing the buyer? I negotiate, nope, I need BUGNEX to take care of this problem before we close the escrow because I don't want any issues after the close of escrow that the work was not properly done, and I don't want my client to go back to me. And now, how hard is to for you guys? Let's see on this escrow to be approved by this HOA to do the work.
That's a good question. Uh, it's case by case. That's where a good strong realtor comes in, because a realtor will actually go the extra step and work with the HOA, which it's my understanding realtors typically aren't required to work with HOAs in a transaction. Uh, but some do, if they're savvy enough to do that. We don't typically get called out to do a lot of townhomes and condos because the HOA takes care of all of that. It's always good to utilize those services, because when you're purchasing a townhome or HOA, you're purchasing into a group of people that are paying monthly dues to have services taken care of. That's one of the benefits of being in an HOA. You don't have to worry about it. Although people do worry, right? You got to make sure the HOA is doing a good job. But it does take longer because you're working with a group, and a lot of times they do things in phases. They'll like do building C, from January to March.
That's what causes the delays. Like you said, they do them phases. Oh, yeah, we're going to do it, but the project is 1 month from now. So,
Right.
okay. So, thank you for your answer on that because definitely that's one of the reasons I stopped asking termite to be paid by the seller or because the HOA, they normally say, oh, the HOA will take care of it. But unfortunately, there are some HOAs that are very efficient and there's some HOAs that are not. They're quite the opposite. All right. Let me see. Let me make sure I'm not forgetting anything. Da-da-da-da-dum. All right. This one. Now, can you I know the answer, but remember, that's another thing why I'm doing this because there are things for us that is kind of like common sense, but because we do this for a living and we do, multiple transactions, but a homeowner or a home buyer, that's the first time they're doing this, the first time they're getting a home inspection report, the first time they're getting a termite report. What's the difference between a termite report and a termite clearance? And when the clearance is provided when you're in escrow?
Uh, Albert, I'll let you hit that one.
Good question. So a termite report is the initial phase. And that's when whoever buyer, seller, whoever calls us out there to go take a look at the house, will diagram the house, put down all the findings that's accessible and visible at the time of inspection, and then we'll hand the report when it's ready. Now, the clearance comes after once everything on that report is taken care of. Again, I don't want to get too far at the subject, but sometimes, for instance, we go back to the HOA, they need they don't want us to do the work. Maybe they do the work, but we called out different findings, different damages. Let's say they fixed it. We have to go back out there and make sure that everything that was on that report that needs to be cleared was taken care of. So we can't just give a clearance that says here, everything's okay. We have to physically go out there and take a look at it again and make sure it's all cleared, whether it's done by, the HOA, some third party, or if it was done by us. Either way, the clearance would not be handed over until everything is completely cleared. Until we know it says this was treated, this was repaired, this was replaced, whatever needs to be done that was on that report, then you get the clearance.
I'm glad you mentioned that, and thank you for mentioning that scenario that BUGNEX provided the report, BUGNEX did the work, but through the negotiations, buyer said, I want X company to do it, seller said do it, but seller wants, because, okay, this part, The termite report that was provided, the first report was by BUGNEX. But now there's a second company that showed up to the picture on the buyer side that sometimes I used to do that as well. You know, I don't care about this report. I want to go with BUGNEX. I trust them. I know they will do their work. Mr. Seller, I got a great offer for you. Here it goes. I want BUGNEX to do the work. Which report is the one that leads at the end of the day, at the end of the transaction? The second one or the first one provided by whoever provided the first report? The clearance, it needs to be provided by the company that actually do the work. Do we need the Bognex clearance? Oh, I'm sorry. Do we need the clearance from the first company that provided the report, or the second one supersedes the first report? Because sometimes I think there's, you said it, the report gets recorded, right? It gets so there's going to be two reports on one house. Which one is the valid one? The one that gets the clearance?
So the one that clears it is basically putting it on their license saying, look, I looked at this, everything that was on that initial report, everything is cleared. Now, I don't know if this is maybe help out with that answer, Alex, but I'll give you a perfect scenario. I did an inspection years ago on an apartment building near the beach area in the Orange County area. That apartment building had dry rot and termite damage everywhere. So I called it out on the findings. I handed everything over to the seller. She decided to get someone else, another termite company, to do the repair work. But she wanted me to go back out there since I was the initial inspector to go take a look at it and to give the clearance. She wanted my clearance. So I went out there. All they did was put some silly putty and bubble gum everywhere. And I took a look at it and I said, I'm not clearing this.
Yeah.
So she was upset because she said, well, you did the initial report. I want you to clear it. I said, I don't have to clear it. The next company can clear it if they want. So depending on the work that gets done, who does what, again, that could raise a lot of questions. I could have cleared it. It's not a problem. It's not, I could clear it if I wanted to. But because the people that went after, they Mickey Mouse the job, I told them, I'm not clearing this. Have them clear it there. And they didn't want to clear it either. So that was the problem because they knew they kind of Mickey Mouse the work. So the clearance of who it comes from, who does what, that's going to be depending on the buyer seller who wants to do it, who they go with. But like I said, for me, I don't mind giving a clearance as long as I know the job was done correctly. Because if I'm clearing it, I'm putting my license on the line.
Okay, great topic. Great point. I'm glad I brought it up. I'm glad you came up with that as well, because that is something that happens. Because sometimes sellers do this, and they do this. We get the termite report from BUGNEX, and we have a great offer, and all of a sudden they say, "I'm gonna save some bucks here. I'm gonna call my handyman. Here it goes. Here's the report. You do the work." But handyman is not even licensed, and he cannot clear the report.
Right.
So, and then happens what you're saying. I didn't know that. Let's call Bucknix again, and you guys can clear it as long the work is properly done, right? And obviously, there's a fee for that. You won't clear it for free, right?
Yeah, no.
Okay. So make sure you charge whatever the cost was for that clearance. You know, so the seller learned their lesson that you know you get what you pay pretty much.
Yeah.
All right, great on that one. Now another one is clearance. Um, we're in escrow, and they need the termite clearance. Some termite companies, do they request to get paid upfront before the escrow closes, or they wait until the escrow closes? Normally, everybody, same as us, we get paid at the end. Have you experienced that you guys don't get paid and did the work?
I'll let you know that one.
Yes, that's happened. I mean, we've had to chase after people for months and months and months, and we've actually, I mean, there's been a couple instances we haven't gotten paid at all. We got a third party collector to go after somebody, but we like to get paid right after our work's done, obviously. But sometimes because we're working in a real estate transaction, we get paid out of escrow.
Okay, so when you said before the my question is, um, can you guys get paid before the escrow closes? Yeah, right. Yes, right.
If they have the capital or they have the resources to pay us. But we understand in a real estate transaction, a lot of times, you know, that money's tied up, right? And so, we'll go through the escrow.
Okay. Why I'm asking those questions because yes, this is for consumers and same as professionals. There are great professionals, great termite companies, realtors, inspectors, but also there's the other ones. Same thing goes with the consumers. Sellers are a little sometimes they request services and they get the companies done and then they don't want to sell and they don't want to pay what they requested. So, and that's the reason when I sense that, I'm like, oh, you want to do that? You need to pay it first. No, because I want to make sure they get paid. I don't want to be responsible that BUGNEX did the work and, you know, it seems you're selling, not selling, you're responsible for that and get paid. So you can charge. It's up to the seller if they want to pay before the escrow closes, right? Like you said, they have the capital. It's like going to a restaurant, ordering a steak, pay, get the steak, right? Awesome. Okay. All right, guys. We're getting close to the end. Let me make sure I don't forget anything. Anything that you would like to cover that is very common for you guys being asked, stuff like that you would like to add?
Well, one of the things that is, I guess, I would like to mention is just the pest control in general. If there's going to be a listing being done, to have a professional company come out, sure, do the termite inspection. But even if maybe there's not a termite inspection and we don't want to do that, do a pest control inspection where a pest technician can come out, take a look at, if there's, like a dirty property, somebody that doesn't maintain the property very well, and there's a lot of bugs going around. Well, we're going to be listing a property for potential buyers. Let the pest control company come out, spray for the ants, kill the spiders, de-web the house. If there's rodent droppings in the attic, clean up the rodent droppings and clean things up. That's a service that I think gets overlooked a lot of times because it's just about the termites. Um, uh,
Right. I like what the word you said, the web, the property, because um, everything makes a difference. And sometimes, like when we're listing the property, they are like, I'm not gonna do any repairs, and you don't have to. But like you said, how about cleaning the house? How about the webbing? Like you said, because everything makes a difference. Even if you have like a house that's been full of clutter, full of it's going to be properties as this, get that clutter out, get it clean because it will make a difference on your net. I'm glad you mentioned that because we have done the webbing in a couple properties, and it makes a difference.
Yeah, I mean, we've noticed that you realtors are doing a lot of, staging of properties. If it's vacant, you're having furniture going and making it look all pretty so people can visualize what their home's going to look like. If it's possible to have a pest control guy come out and do a one-time treatment, which is like what, 150 bucks.
Yeah.
I mean, and clean up all the eaves, get all the webs out. I mean, if we need to put out some rodent traps or, some bait boxes and clean up some things, that's the perfect time to do it.
Great. So I'm gonna keep that in mind now that you're mentioning because I did that the webbing with this cleaning company that I used, but now I know the pest control companies, and now you guys are there. Definitely, you guys are gonna be our company moving forward. But now on pest control, do you do an inspection or you go and charge like just so we know how that works.
So the general pest control inspection will be free. And what's nice about it, so you can give us a call, take a look at it. Also depending on the area where you live, we're very generous with the mileage. So I would say 90+% of it is going to be free for anyone, and it's not going to hurt for us to go out there and take a look at it. Because a lot of times people will mistake a pest or a bug. They'll call us and say, I have, in fact, I'll give you another perfect example. I've had customers call me and say, I have fleas in my house. So we give them a price for fleas, and they think, okay, I get out there and they're not fleas. They're springtails. Springtails look like a flea. They bounce around, but they're not getting bitten. So that's why it's so important. You go out there, you identify what the pest is, the problem. Then we can come up with a game plan on how we're going to fix it. And it's very affordable. We have monthlies, we have bi-monthlies, and we have quarterly services. They work really great. Again, it's like you said yourself, you paid for someone on your home. We come around, we clean all the cobwebs around the patio furniture, around the window seals, the door frames. We'll take care of the garage door. That's usually another big area. And then we treat. This way your home is pest free.
Yeah.
Great. Okay. And the last question that I have, why? I know the answer, but I want you to say the answer. Why there are companies that there is this report and there's another company that comes with a report with this way less, or the opposite? The seller provided this preferred termite company that they've been using for years, and there is like this report with $1,000, and we ordered a second report from BUGNEX, and it's like $4,000. Why there is discrepancies between reports?
I'm going to let you touch that one, Albert.
Well, that's a good question, because I've done more inspections than I can count in my life, and I've had people call me say, hey, your report is more detailed or your report is less detailed from this guy to the next. So the short answer to it is this: the state just holds the individual license inspector according to what he put on the report. So it's the way I kind of like liken is like, if all three of us, if we all were to cook chicken, at the end of the day, it's still going to be chicken, but maybe I like to use sea salt, Duane likes to use, garlic salt, and so on and so on. At the end of the day, it's chicken, but the way we got there is different. And the same thing with the report. So everybody's eyeballs are different from one next to the next. They're going to call something out. As long as there's no gross negligence or any defrauding, there's nothing wrong with the reports being different. All the state is going to do is they're just going to hold you accountable to your report. They're not going to say, why does your report look different from this guy? So again, as long as there's no gross negligence or no defrauding, that's all that matters.
Yeah, and some are more thorough than others. Some use more expensive ways to treat. Like some will replace wood, some will just put Bondo. So
That's a good question. Yeah, someone will replace the wood and someone might not. The way I've seen it, when I because sometimes let's see, I use you guys, BUGNEX, and provided a termite report that it's completely different from the one that the seller provided. If I'm representing the buyer, it is more expensive. It's kind of becoming a deal breaker, and it's not like it's more expensive. It's like, but there's a reason. You guys cover more. You guys find more. This one has barely. There's the only that's what I'm seeing common when there's discrepancies. This report that is less covers less. They,
right.
It's less work, so makes a difference. They didn't inspect as deep as this other company went. Now, on the other side, there are companies that inflate the prices. I've seen it on termite companies, and that's why I started like really mistrusting the termite companies. And I'm not saying, I'm talking in general, guys, because there's great companies and there's other companies not so great, not so ethical. But I'm seeing it like there's sometimes they inflate. So being that said, do you recommend they get like a second opinion on termite reports?
So I don't ever hide away from that. I tell people get 2 or 3 inspections. I'm very confident in my report, so I don't have nothing to hide. Same thing here at BUGNEX. We're thorough, we're honest. We want to help the buyer and the seller out the best as possible. So yeah, get a couple of inspections, and when you do, you're going to obviously have the similarities, and then you might have some little offshoots, and again, that's one of the many things that separates us from everyone else, is that one of my biggest things is that, okay, you have those differences, those offshoots, call your inspector. call us, please, and we'll walk you through everything that you need to know.
And it's so important. I mean, when you have a company that you are, say we bid $5,000 on the job, and this other company comes in at 1,500. Well, call and ask us to justify it. Why are we putting that price there? And we'll tell you, well, what's built into that price? We're putting spruce. We're replacing 30 feet of wood. We're gonna do this other cleanup, and we're gonna have it done, in 48 hours. We're gonna paint everything to where, and ask that other company, are you gonna do these things? And you'll find out, no, they're not.
Exactly. And you know what? It's a good thing. I'm glad we mentioned that because it is. There's always a reason. And I think that as long as you can justify there's your answer. You can go with the 1,500 knowing that this is not being done, or we can go this way. But there's a reason why it's less.
It needs to be apples to apples.
Exactly. Yeah.
And real quickly, Alex, Duane brought up a good point, and you want to be really careful because some of the inspectors, they'll go out there and they'll say, yeah, we're going to replace this wood, and they think they're replacing it with, say, Douglas fir or something, and we went out there and it was really rough cut wood. Again, that's going to be a lot more expensive than some type of framing wood. So you want to make sure your inspector is seasoned. You want to make sure he knows what he's doing, so we can walk you through that. Well, that's the reason why the other inspector A charged so little, because he's not using the right wood.
Right, and then houses are different too. So if we're inspecting a $4 million luxury home, Craftsman in Pasadena, I mean, we're not quoting the cheap stuff, because they're going to want this house to be, done correctly.
With the type of house, with the structure, with this, and it's like basically you're saying to so people understand is like we're not using cheap stuff on your $4 million house.
Right.
We're putting, like you said, apples with apples.
Yeah.
Now, last nugget. What would be the best way for find a reliable termite company? Obviously, call BUGNEX, call Duane and Albert, but let's see what will be the best way to find a reliable company. Because same as realtor, same as any other services, there's a lot of people out there, but what would be a good method to find a reliable company?
Albert, you want to touch that?
Just call us.
Well, I mean, so there's
down here, Alex, and have them.
Okay. Well, to be honest, word of mouth goes a long way. If you have a real estate agent that's going to recommend something, odds are that real estate agent is going to recommend a good company, because no agent wants to damage their own reputation. So an agent's going to always steer you into the right direction. You can always obviously Google things like that, but I always like to listen to my agents because, like I said, they don't want to hurt their own reputation. So they're going to always work with the best.
Yeah. I mean, you can always call the Structural Pest Control Board too and see if there's been any complaints filed against a company.
That's a good way, but a lot of people don't want to do that now. What are your thoughts on online reviews?
Online reviews are good. Definitely, you can go for the Google 5 stars or the Yelp reviews and whatnot. People typically look at that closely in a lot. But, you got to take that with a grain of salt sometimes too, because some companies inflate those and only ask customers to leave reviews that like them.
Yeah, sometimes, I think it's a more organic way of doing it, but you find the other things. There's a lot of people that just like to put bad reviews just because they like it, they enjoy it. It's like the people that go to open houses to talk shit about homes. There's people that love to do, those guys that go to open houses, they don't buy anything, but they trash the property, but bad mouth. And I'm seeing people that put bad reviews. You follow them, and there's a pattern. Bad in everything they do, everything they go. Just sharing that nugget, trust reviews, but also a good review, check the source if there's a bad review.
Yep.
It's been a pleasure talking to you guys. I think we covered the main things that a home buyer, home seller, homeowner needs to know about termite. And how can they find you? What's the best way? What's the number? I put the number. Obviously, Duane, we will be using BUGNEX moving forward. But anybody else watching this video, how did they find you? Instagram, phone number?
We have a pretty good digital footprint. If you just go to bugnex.com, I mean, our numbers listed there. I think everybody knows how to just ask Google, uh, and it's easy to find us.
Okay, so guys, I really appreciate your time. For the people watching this video, if you want to get in touch with Duane or Albert, their information is going to be shared on the links. Don't forget to like us. Don't forget to make a comment so this content can spread out and more people can take advantage of these nuggets that gonna make a difference on your purchase or on the sale of your property. Anything you would like to say before we end this conversation, guys?
Just thank you for having us. Appreciate it. This is fun.
Thank you, Alex.
Thanks to you guys, and I appreciate your time because it's valuable, and I feel like honor and privilege that I have this network of people that I personally trust and rely, and I know, like you said, the extension of our services is our network, and that's why like you said, Albert, it's true. If you're working with a good sharp realtor, they work with a good sharp termite inspector, with a good sharp home inspector, and on. Because it took us years to build those relationships. It took us years to find those companies. So that's the benefit of working with reliable realtors. So thank you very much, guys. And to you guys, I'll see you next week.